Back in 2018, I started my IT journey, and up to that point, all I knew was Windows. Honestly, if you'd asked me at that time about using a command line interface, I'd have just looked at you funny. When I started using Linux, I was already familiar with Windows command prompt, but was confused by the concept of a shell and the concept of a terminal and a console, and everybody using them interchangeably. What the heck are all these things? Well, don't worry. You're not going to have to wonder like I did. This is B from TatOG Tech, and today I'm going to break down the difference between the shell, terminal, and console, so stick with me. I've got a favor to ask. If you like this type of video and want to see more content like it, make sure you are subscribed and hit the bell button for notifications. Also, don't forget to give this video a like if you like it. Let me know what you liked, didn't like, or if you have any comments, questions, concerns, or emotional offers down in the comment section below. And lastly, make sure you stick around all the way to the end to get the most out of this video. Let's do this thing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and switch us over to the desktop. All right, so the first thing that we want to talk about is a shell and the question, what is a shell? The shell is a program that allows a user to interact directly with the kernel through commands. So right here we've got a shell. Let's go ahead and run a who am I, and we get a response back. So we are actually using this shell, we are actually communicating with the kernel of the operating system. Now, there are many different types of shells, but they all accomplish the same basic things. The difference is going to be in their features. Now, the different types of shells in Linux, at least the three that I'm going to cover, are the more common ones. There's tons of other types of shells out there, so don't take this as an inclusive list. But this first one right here is going to be Bourne shell, or the abbreviated as SH. This is the original Unix shell from the 1970s, pretty basic compared to modern shells. Now, one of the biggest drawbacks of this shell, in my personal opinion, is the fact that I can't push the up arrow to cycle through previous commands. It's just going to do that over and over and over again. And if you ever really want to know what it's like living in the 1970s, just go and use the Bourne shell. All right, the next one that we're going to be talking about is going to be the Bourne again shell. This one is, the one that's most commonly used in most modern Linux distributions. Think Ubuntu. Now, this one also incorporates different aspects of other shells. It's also known as Bourne again shell, but is also known as Bash, and that's the one you'll hear more. It's super common. Pretty much all the Linux operating systems that I interact with on a regular basis, with the exception of Kali Linux, uses the Bash shell. Now, ZSH is the last one that we're going to cover, which is this one right here. Now, this is ZSH, also known as Z shell, and this is a shell extension that is the most modern of all of the different shells. Now, this one is going to be used by Mac OS as well as Kali Linux. And really, we can see the big difference between the Bourne shell, but if we get into the Bourne again shell or Bash and then ZSH or Z shell, we can see that the differences are a lot less when it comes to these two. And honestly, a lot of it can come down to configuration. Because you just have different configurations for each one depending on what their out of the box configuration is. And personally, I don't really see a significant difference between them. Now, I know that there's quality of life stuff, and I'm sure somebody can point out all the differences in the comments below. Now, if you do want a more in-depth coverage on the differences between these shells, please definitely let me know in the comments, and we can maybe see about making that happen. But now let's go ahead and move on to the actual terminal. Now, the terminal, it's a program that allows you to interact with the shell. Now, terminals in their original form were not connected to the computer, it wasn't hard connected to the computer. You were accessing the computer resources from a remote location. I've actually got some pictures here that I actually wanted to be able to show you to get an idea of the changes that have taken place. Now, if I could just get this to cooperate without going all the way over there. Go. Okay, now this first one that we're going to look at here, this is going to be, this is actually the first Unix terminal, was the ASR33 teletype, which output all of the text to paper. Teletype actually is where we get the term TTY from. And if you're not familiar with TTY, it's how you connect to your Linux system through either SSH or Telnet. So if you're ever curious of why it's TTY, it's because of these teletype devices. Now, there was also video terminals. Video terminals were later introduced, such as the VT05, which had a monitor actually built into it. And I'm actually going to be putting this website here in the show notes, because this website actually has a really good just kind of explanation of this stuff in writing form. So if you want some additional supplemental information, definitely check out the website down in the show notes. And another video I'd probably recommend if you want a little bit more on this topic is I believe it's called The History of the Internet. It's like a 10-hour video. I think it's from Free Code Camp. I'll try to link that video down in the comment and sorry, down in the show notes below, but it gives a really in-depth history and you'll get to understand a lot of why it is that we use the terminology and stuff that we do from that video. But I will warn you, like I said, it is 10 hours long. I have not actually up to this point made it all the way through, but it does have a lot of interesting stuff. It's just a lot to sit down for in a 10-hour span. Now, a terminal is actually a hardware device, as you can see here, because we have this one right here, and then we've got the BT05. These are both hardware terminals. Now, we also have something that's known as a terminal emulator, and that's what you're going to be using inside of your Linux distribution. Is this right here? This is your terminal emulator. It's basically just a program that emulates a terminal. Common terminal emulators are going to include the GNOME terminal, which is used by Ubuntu, Terminator, which is my personal favorite, as well as Console with a K, which is going to be part of the KDE desktop environment. And one interesting fact that I found out today was that Terminal, which is the terminal emulator for macOS, is actually just called Terminal. It is also a terminal emulator. So the more you know. Now there are character slash text terminals and graphical terminals. Now a character text terminal is going to be like the ones that we've looked at previously. Like these right here, these two right here are going to be character slash text terminals because they can only display text. Now there's also going to be graphical terminals, which will allow for graphics and pictures on screen. So if we go in here, when we run htop, we can actually see some animations going on. And you'll see that a lot of times with these prompts and things like that. And this is going to be through a terminal called Xterminal, which is the best known graphics terminal. And all modern, no, I shouldn't say all, most modern terminal emulators use a version of this terminal. So cool, right? Now let's go ahead and move on to the console. This one we're actually going to kind of spend some time here in Kali Linux. Now a console is like a terminal, but it's physically connected to the computer. You can see that distinction. It would actually be on the computer. And I actually got a picture here to show you. If we come down here, this is the PDP-7 microcomputer console. And we can see that here we're actually sitting at a desk with the computer in front of us. Keep in mind, these were not computers. These were terminals. These were standalone. You were accessing the computer resources that were in some other room, some other center, somewhere else, and you were accessing them remotely through these devices. This, you're connected directly to the actual computer. So that's the major difference here. Now, the cool thing is when we're talking about a console, if we're talking about a console, they are very similar to terminals, but with these, you can actually receive error messages if the OS fails to boot, which you are not going to be able to do with a terminal because you're making a remote connection or a non. Not always necessarily a non-remote, but also just maybe not a non-direct physical connection to the actual computer. And then it can also boot into what is called a single user mode. Now, single user mode is a mode that's primarily used for troubleshooting. I'm not going to give you any more than that, just because that would be a whole video in itself. If you want me to cover that in more detail, let me know down below. Now, if you're using a GUI, desktop, now you actually can access the console. Now we're going to do this. This gets a little funky here in VirtualBox. This is actually a remote desktop to a Windows computer that I have that's running Kali Linux. And if we do here, we go here, we go in here, we're going to pull up a soft keyboard as they call it. And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and go back and we're going to go ahead and hit Control Alt. And we're going to go into the actual console. We're going to hit F2. And here we go. So we can actually just do put our credentials in. Here we go. We can run who. There we go, and we can see that we are Kali. Now, I hope this works. It did not work when I tried this earlier, but I know it works on actual, any actual, system. Is if you do Control, Alt, and then F1, it should take you back to, actually it's not doing that. Let's try one of the other ones. It really depends on the distribution is which one is actually going to be the graphical one. Usually it's F1, but it may just be because we're running in a virtual machine, but you can see that it's actually switching. And if you look here, we can see here that we've got T2Y1. Here we use T2Y3. Let's try to go through. I think usually it's one at least in my experience, but we're gonna go through 8. If we can't find it through 8, we'll go ahead. Oh, there we go. See, it was 7. I have seen that one before, but here in this particular case, it was actually kept through F7. These first ones, and this is actually how you can have, if you only have a console, this is how you can have multiple sessions, if you will. You can actually, if you want to be doing one thing in one of your consoles, you can actually bring up a second console and then go into that second console and actually do something different. Say if you got updates running on the other one or something like that, you can do it that way. But that is some pretty cool stuff, right? Now, that's the difference between the shell terminal and the console. Check out this other video from my channel if you're interested. Remember, mistakes make you better, so keep on making them. Thank you so much for watching my video and have the greatest of days.